Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Laura Canfield Show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm so excited because my good friend Lori Spagna is here with us, and we're going to be having a wonderful conversation. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's something that sometimes I can't wrap my head around. So I'm excited. We're going to be talking about the time trap of third and fourth dimensions, and plugging from third and fourth dimensional hooks, cords, anchors, entanglements, and attachments, and vibing into and aligning with the fifth dimension of no time. So some of you are like, what? What do you mean no time? What is that? So we'll talk about that in a in a few minutes. But for those of you who don't know Lori, Lori is a best-selling author, spiritual teacher, intuitive energy healer, ascension guide, a multidimensional channel, an animal communicator, a visionary, light worker, and starseed, who has radically transformed her life after a series of near-death experiences and an induction experience while living in Maui. Lori has helped to transform the lives of thousands of humans and animals around the world via her channeled ascension guidance, intuition, energy healing, and animal communication. She leads seminars, workshops, and retreats where she provides ascension training, sacred energy healing transmissions, and dormant DNA and sacred key code activations for humans and animals, and assists others to awaken to their alignment with the true divine source which exists within everyone, so that all beings can live their best life ever. And Lori is a regular guest on our show, so I'm always so happy to have her with us because we always have a lot of fun. Our conversations go, wherever they want to go. But today, basically we are going to be talking about ascension and ascension timelines. So we're going to learn about the third, fourth, fifth dimension and beyond, linear time as it relates to ascension, and so much more. Looping patterns, I'm really interested in that for myself as well, and shifting from linear stress-based time and into no time, which is what we all want, and can really make a big difference in for our own lives when we're in no time, and learn about divine timing and the new time in 5D and so much more. And I'll be honest, Lori's going to do most of the talking today. I was saying earlier, it's like, oh, I hope I don't lose my voice before the call. So I didn't, but, but Lori's going to be doing most of the talking. But for those of you who do have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. And when we get, to the point where I was taking live caller questions, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself at that time. So Lori, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me, Laura, and thanks to everybody who's here.
I'm so excited, and one of the things I didn't say when I was introducing you was, Lori's been here many times, but she's also a good friend. So I'm always so, happy to have her here with us for her to share her wisdom, and her activations and healings are amazing, as you'll all see, because we always do some, Yes. So I'm just putting it out there because I know we always do some. And sometimes the conversation goes to places that, we're not even planning, but it's also based on your questions and the energy of the group and the collective right now of, what we're all going through and what we're interested in learning about. So Lori is a wonderful teacher in that aspect. So Lori, yay, let's start.
Thank you, Laura. I love and value our friendship too. I mean, I don't know if those were the exact words you used, but I
love those words. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to get right into it because I want to, I really am interested in this topic about the looping patterns and about, linear time. And, I am a shaman, a practicing shaman. And so I understand about no time, right? And all that stuff. But still, it's sometimes so hard to explain to people. So let's talk about linear time and especially the looping patterns, because I think sometimes we do get stuck in the looping patterns that, over and over again, right? And, Groundhog Day is coming.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect word. That's the first word that was going to come to my mind. But before I say that, let me just say this, because of what you said earlier. Mm-hmm. I'm a light worker and a starseed, but I'm a truther. I'm a person who has always looked for the highest truth I could find, the clearest, most accurate truth. And here's the truth. One of the truths I've come to know is that everything is true. Everything is true from your perspective. Mm-hmm. If you believe something to be true, it's true for you. But what cannot be denied is what we call universal laws. And universal laws are fact, whether we know them or not. This is not the same thing as natural laws, even though natural laws are also fact in our natural in our natural reality, laws of nature. So we have laws of nature, like gravity's a law of nature.
Mm-hmm.
But laws of nature are breakable, bendable. Universal laws are not. And this is very important for our discussion today, just to set the foundation. So whatever comes up, I'm a truther. I've been searching for truths for my whole lifetime. And I understand that a lot of things I say may be up to you to believe, perceive. You can challenge your own belief systems. I tend to be a button pusher because I say some things that people don't necessarily know or believe or agree with. And that's up to you to use your discernment in your own life to decide if it's true, real, or right for you personally, or if it's something that's unbendable that may be aligned with universal truth. Those are based in the laws. But I work directly with universal laws. They are intelligent living beings of their own. A being is not the word we could use to a law. It's not a being. It doesn't encompass a body. I'm already being corrected. I can hear it. But they are a frequency of consciousness, and they are conscious of themselves, and they exist beyond the fifth dimension. They exist on a sixth-dimensional frequency, and most humans are not accessing that frequency yet. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and the laws they don't dance with our egos. So it's like they're not even interested. They don't need to chat with us unless we can attain and somehow have certain virtues to interact with them. So anyway, but that's another conversation. We're not even going to necessarily talk, but it's going to come up today.
So I was just going to say really quickly, that's for every conversation. Take what works for you, and whatever doesn't, just put it aside. Leave it aside for maybe sometime later, So, because wherever we are at in a moment in time, some things will resonate with us and some things won't. But just be open to listening and hearing and say, okay, maybe, I'm not sure about this yet, but you know what, maybe, and so, later on, it might come to you that, yeah, you know what, that makes total sense. It's like, oh, now I get it. A lot of times we get stuff when we get it, right? So, but just be open to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, because these calls are always about expanding our consciousness, really. That's what we're all here on planet Earth doing.
Mm-hmm. And that's what my purpose is about expanding consciousness. And these shows are, sometimes bringing topics, information that you might not have heard, or if you have, you're hearing it again, but you might hear it in a different way. So just be open to that. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this year is such a big year for the expansion of consciousness in the collective field anyway, because what we have is the planet Jupiter, not to go on to the astrology track, but it's relevant. It influences our planet and the consciousness of all beings who live here. And that is that the planet Jupiter is in the house of Sagittarius. You don't have to understand astrology to get what this means. Jupiter is expansion, gifts of wisdom and consciousness. Sagittarius is the seeker, the philosopher, the thinker, the student, the teacher. I'm a Sag rising. That makes this is like a very significant thing that my whole life has been about that. So when Jupiter comes into that for the whole planet, it's affecting us all. We all are expanding our teaching, our learning, our philosophies, what we're coming into knowing, our consciousness overall. This is going to be a massive year for that planetarily. So this is what I'm here for. That helped a lot, didn't it?
Yes.
All right.
Awesome.
So
thank you.
I didn't realize I turn the light dimmer in the night, and then I bring it up in the day, and I didn't realize it was an off. Okay. All right, let's go to your first thing that you brought up: looping patterns and ground.
Looping patterns and linear time. Some people may take linear time as a given, as like there's no other way, right?
So everybody does. Yeah. How many times have you heard people say? I mean, I've heard this so many times. I always laugh at it when people say it because I'm like, oh, they don't know the truth.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard people say, you and I have the same 24 hours in a day? How many times have you heard leaders in the world stage, big, huge, successful people say, everybody has 24 hours, or we all got the same number of hours in the day?
Right.
That's not true. That's not a fact. Because the underlying principle, belief in there is that time is constant. And that's not a fact. That's untrue. It's a belief system. So time is not constant and time is not, but we'll take a step back from that because I've already kind of pushed it. So what we in our Western world, and actually all over the collective primarily, has been programmed into some form of linear time tracking system. And that linear time tracking system is a watch or a clock or a calendar or some form of that, right? And we track it in our minds like minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, and centuries, decades, centuries, all of that. And we string it together and we believe that that's linear. Last week, last year, next week, next year, that's linear time. And everybody's using time tracking devices that they either wear on their body or on their computer or on their wall. And this is how the collective agrees that that is real. And so therefore everybody is buying into this notion that it's a constant because we've created tracking devices that basically make it constant. And it's very important to understand that because everybody on planet Earth, I mean, even if you're living on a remote island somewhere and you're, some kind of tribe that doesn't track time that same way, even in that sense, they're using some form of tracking of time, whether it's stars, moon, sun, planets, sunrise, sunset. And that's a more authentic tracking of time. That's more natural than what we are using in our society, in our so-called Western and so-called civilized societies. But nonetheless, everybody's using time tracking of some type. And except for if you talk about people who are living out, in some Himalayan mountain, seeking their own form of spiritual enlightenment, and they're consciously, maybe that's not what they're doing. They could be living on Shasta, who knows where. They could be anywhere, but they're consciously unplugging from time. And that's really what this is about. So, okay, we understand linear time. And let's just go back a little bit in time, in history, to understand the evolution of time. I have some paint on my nails, so I was just noticing that. So the evolution of time, really where we started tracking it as a sort of formalized society, it goes back even prior to Julius Caesar, but Julius Caesar created a calendar called the Julian calendar. And Julius Caesar was basically a dictator. I mean, I don't know that word is used to describe him. I'm not a history expert. However, he basically would say, do it my way or else. If you didn't do it his way, he was known for like burning down cities and towns. It was his way or the highway. He made it very famous about collecting taxes. And, that's even in some more recent versions of the Bible where that was, from my consciousness and what I get from source, inserted into the Bible to enforce the taxation system. That's not true and authentic to the original. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So we won't go down that path. But nonetheless, Julius Caesar created the Julian calendar. And that was like, I don't know how many years BC. And we lived on that. I can't remember the exact how far back BC. In fact, I'm sure I could find it. But in any case, because I actually had some things from a class I recently taught, and it happens to be it was 600 BC. Yeah. No, 46 BC. Anyway, so then this Gregorian Pope, known as Pope Gregory VIII, came along, and that was 1582. And he redid the calendar because from his perspective, that linear time was dropping behind, like too far behind the equinox and the sun and Easter. They weren't lining up. So he creates a new calendar, the Gregorian calendar. And this Gregorian calendar now tracks time in a new way that now Western society follows. And I'll just make one other note, because many of the people on this call will know, obviously, prior to Caesar, we had Mayan calendar, Aztec calendar, the Toltecs kept track of systems, and that was based on sun, moon, stars, movement of the planets. That was much more accurate. Those calendars were mostly based on days of 260-day lunar annual cycles. How do we get from 260 days to 365 days? I don't know. I'll tell you. What?
That's a lot.
In all of these cases, even the Mayan calendars and the Aztec and the Toltecs, which were more precise, and even now we also have what's called the Chinese calendar, right? We follow that, the Chinese calendar.
And the Indian calendar too.
And the what?
The Indian calendar is based on the moon
calendars. There's an Indian calendar that some people still follow. And the Chinese calendar, by the way, I just want to say, if you're tapped into source, I talked about this much more extensively in my most recent manifestation and healing circle predictions call that we did in January for the year. The Chinese calendar is off now. It's completely inaccurate. Well, okay, there's overlap. But if you're into that, you might not see it because what you believe is true for you. That might not be you. You might have a different experience, but nonetheless, it's not an accurate representation of time anymore because we've evolved. This is where we're going with this call, so stay with me. But the key to understand is that in every one of these cases, every one, there was a human or a group of humans behind the tracking system.
Right.
So some external human beings came together, whether it was one like Julius Caesar or Pope Gregory VIII, or a collective, groups of them, shamans, whoever, who basically, we'll use the word dictated, created time. And then everybody else hooked into it and said, we'll follow that tracking system. And so because the collective agreed, we made it true. And when a collective agrees on something, that becomes an agreement, a group contract that a group agrees upon, and then we get programmed and wired into it and we follow it.
Right.
So, but just key light bulb here is that people, even in history, created it. They wrote the story, they charted it, they were leaders, everyone followed. And we're still following those tracking system. So we can all agree on this. Yeah, I hope we can.
Yep.
Because that's kind of the platform of where we're going. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what time really is. But before we do that, let's get to the Groundhog Day thing. So what happens in reality, I'm just listening to see if this is where my guidance wants us to go. Okay, well, we know they are saying stick with the groundhog and then go to the dimensions instead of where you were going to go. So I got that. So in reality, what happens is we are energetic beings. And so we have certain energetics which are based on our beliefs, our belief systems, our perspectives, our ideologies, the energy we carry, the blockages, which are emotional, mental, intellectual, energetic, conscious and unconscious, whatever they are. And this form of density tends to coagulate, law of attraction, right? And this coagulation is also based on collective agreements and universal laws. And as it coagulates, it just sticks around. So it repeats and repeats and repeats. So what you have is what we call this experience like Groundhog Day, or we could call sometimes we can get even more specific, looping patterns. Looping patterns especially happen in the mind, where you're thinking the same thought over and over and again. And if you're really conscious, you start to realize like, fuck, I've been just going over and over and over again in my mind. And you're like, there's just no way out. You're in a looping pattern. But the problem is that these looping patterns in the brain impress upon the quantum field it's a form of energy, and it creates, recreates, and cycles. And then you start having the same experience over and over again because it's impressing upon your reality. Does this make sense? Yeah, you muted yourself, Laura?
Yeah, just for a second.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. I got it. Okay. So, all right. So let's talk some more about this. Give me a second here. So a lot of people, even very enlightened people, think that there's a law of time. This is not true. And also a lot of people think and believe that there is a dimension of time. This is also untrue. So we exist in the physical world in a third dimensional reality. That's a physical reality, right? This is based on height, width, depth. Those are 3 dimensions right there. I mean, that's 1 dimension, actually. It's space is the dimension, is space. But in order to have space, you have height, width, and depth. Time is a form of space. So it exists in this reality, but it's not a dimension of its own. It exists within space. Space is height, width, depth. And time is a concept of depth. Today, tomorrow, there's a space. Does that make it its own dimension? No, it exists within space.
Right.
Space is a dimension. Do you know what the other 2 dimensions are? This is now getting so widely known. When I used to talk about this, 5 years ago and stuff, people would never know. But just think, you hear my voice, you hear each other's voice. That's sound. You can hear bells ring. When you get really conscious, you can hear the hum of Mother Earth, and that's light workers, like the sound of just bliss. You can just wake up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, there's no noise, and you're just like tuning into the sound of Mother Earth humming. It's just beautiful, right?
Right.
That's dimension. There is a dimension. And in fact, doesn't it say in the Bible first was the word? Not to quote the Bible, because I am not a Bible expert, but it's recognized first was the word. I think that what it says, and that means sound.
Yeah.
And in fact, many spiritual communities know Om, Aum, that's the sound that created the Big Bang, right? So, can you see my doggy back
there? Yeah.
Okay, so that's a dimension of its own. And then what's the 3rd dimension? Do we know? Anyone? Light. Light is a dimension. We can see light. We can see light. And light vibrates at different frequencies of energy, so it creates color and contrast. The contrast of the color is even a space of its own. The differences. So those are the 3 dimensions, right? Well, where is time in there? How can we experience time? Time is part of space, but in reality, time exists in the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is the dimension of reality where non-physical exists. Everything non-physical. I mean, you have thoughts. What is a thought, right? And this is made famous by Wayne Dyer. He never referred to it as, and he's not the only one, of course, but he never referred to it as the 4th dimension. I don't think that knowing was available when he was writing his earliest books. But I remember reading in his book at the age of 15, where do thoughts come? Deepak Chopra is another one who's made that famous. Where do thoughts come from? Where do they exist? Where do they go? Like, you can't trace it in the brain. You pick up on thoughts when you're around people all the time. You hear, you're like, I was just going to say that. Okay, well, you're hearing a frequency. All right. Emotions also, same thing. Where do your emotions exist? And for those of us who are really awake in the spiritual metaphysical community, we know we have an emotional body, we have a mental body. Okay, fine. But where does it exist? It exists in the 4th dimension. So how does time get created? Somebody thinks, oh, let's track this sunrise, sunset. Let's track the passing of time. Let's put it in a quantifiable, measurable way. We'll make a calendar. We'll make a clock. We'll put a timepiece. We'll stick a crystal in there, because crystals are the record keepers. Crystals are timekeepers. And this is how we've all collectively agreed. Now, what happens here when everybody decides to anchor into or plug into someone else's system is that we lose connection with our own natural rhythms. We lose connection, and then we start plugging into the collective belief systems around time. So what are the things that are hooked into time?
Oops.
I mean, everything's hooked into time. That's a funny thing. And everything's hooked into time. Your aging process is hooked into time. You have an aging belief system that when you turn 80, you're going to be, old or whatever. I'm putting those words in, but I'm just using it as an example. So death is hooked into time because, well, it's impossible to live beyond 100 years or whatever, right? That's hooked into time. These things, we call these entanglements. It's entangled because one belief actually has nothing to do with the other belief. We think it is. And until you disentangle this stuff, you are SOL. Because now someone else is programming on time, and the collective belief system about time is influencing you, us, each of us, on almost an unconscious level, because we're just taking it for granted. We're just assuming it's true. We're not being the philosophers thinking for ourselves. Who told me this stuff? Oh, because everybody else believes it's true, it's true. We're just like sheep in a herd. So, okay, well, let me just stay with, and I'm not criticizing us. This is us waking up. This is what we go through when we wake up. We have to start questioning for ourselves what we've been taught and told. That's what we're here doing. And this is the business of light workers and truthers and star seeds and change agents. And okay, so way showers. So what else is hooked into time? Illness is another one. I mean, how many times have you heard in your life, oh, you know, when you get old, you start losing your memory? My parents say that sometimes. I'm like, well, that doesn't have to be true. That's not necessarily true. Who says it's true? Well, you're watching too many commercials. Take Claritin Clear. Yeah, just please, 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 collective, can we start impressing upon the field that we are done with advertising that enforces sickness, illness, disease? Can we start telling the quantum field, had enough of that quantum field, that we've had enough of brainwashing commercials telling us that it's inevitable to get sick and the only solution we have is a pill? Please. I'm sorry, pharmaceutical drug companies. It's time to stop doing that. Okay, I'm enforcing my particular position here because I have some influence. But that's a perfect example of time and illness being linked in. Mm-hmm. You get these commercials on TV and they start telling you what happens to you, and you're in an alpha brainwave state, which is, you know, you're at peace. You're just chilling out in front of the TV, and someone is mind blocking, mind screwing you, and you don't even know it because you're just enjoying TV or cooking dinner or whatever. And then all of a sudden this message comes out, and then it shows you some old person on the floor saying, help, I'm falling and I can't get up. And then someone else comes in and goes, you need a wheelchair, or you need this, or you need that. This, not only is this mind control, mind influence, because these commercials know how to do this, they're doing it at frequencies, but they're influencing your belief system, and that's hooked into aging. Mm-hmm. It's hooked into time, because they show you people at certain age ranges. Claritin Clear, you only see people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. But, you know, broken bones, wheelchairs, you see people 80.
Right.
Okay, this is time. I'm getting onto the brainwashing topic, which we weren't really going to go there, but these are things that are hooked in to time.
Yeah.
So
that's also why I don't watch TV. I don't watch TV. I don't watch commercials, but I'm sure I'm still picking up stuff from the collective too, and from not just from the collective, but how society, like, you know, with society, with family, you know, how I've been programmed all my life, right? Because my parents are like that.
But Laura, you don't watch TV because you are a leader.
Right.
Leaders don't watch TV, and people who are stepping out to be way showers, change agents, we are the ones who must unplug ourselves from this manipulation that's affecting our consciousness and that's damaging to the collective, that is literally a form of its own crime against humanity, because it's literally telling people a mistruth in order to sell product in this mm-hmm. example. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't watch TV because you've already reclaimed some sovereignty over your own consciousness. And in order to do that, we have to stop watching these commercials. But we're the collective here today. We're the ones saying we are the light workers. We are the way showers. And we know that in order to be that role, we have to have circles like this where we can speak freely, openly, where we're not afraid of, you know, pushing some buttons, and where we're willing to recognize it's not about rioting in the streets. That's not the solution.
No.
Not about writing letters to government officials who are paid off by the very pharmaceutical drug companies. It's about unplugging, getting clear, coming into alignment, recognizing these truths. That's Sagittarian. That's Jupiter in Sag. So, okay, but let's come back to topic, because I always divert. I go off topic, but I
so
come back.
So for me, the looping part was the thoughts in your mind over and over again.
Yeah, but there's much more to looping. We haven't even gotten into it all. So stay with me, because I'm trying to lay proper foundation for it. Because if you understand that these foundational aspects that hook you into time, until you really get them, you don't understand the looping part when I go into it, because that's really rich, meaty stuff, right? So for example, another one that's really hooked into time is wealth or poverty. Mm-hmm. So here's a good example of how wealth or poverty links in, and it is a looping pattern. If your grandparents, an example, went through the Great Depression, and somehow it got written into their DNA, because everything that goes as a trauma affects the physiology of the body, the mental, the emotional. So if you're poor and everybody around you is poor, and there's bread lines and no one can afford to eat, and you can't afford to pay food for your family, that gets energetically anchored into the DNA. This is your great-grandparents in the early 1900s. You weren't even alive at that time, supposedly. I mean, that's not really true, but that's a linear story. And so this impresses energetically. Now, flash forward 2008, great economic collapse, and somehow you, as an individual, have some experience where you lose all your money. And you don't even know why, because you just were watching the news every night, but you got affected by that. This is a looping pattern. It's an example of a looping pattern, but it's also how time, without us even being conscious, affected us, because something in the past is affecting us in the now moment. And it's, in this example, related to wealth and poverty. Right. Another example, just wealth and poverty, on that same topic, if your parents, completely different example, or your grandparents said, this is what happened in my family, I'll share this, even though my father has been a huge supporter and fan of mine and been wonderful help. But when I was 7, I'll never forget, I walked out of SeaWorld. This is before I swore off zoos, aquariums, and encaged animal experiences. I was too young at that time to know any different. I walked out of SeaWorld and I said, that's what I want to do for my life. I want to work with animals. I remember he was holding my hand and he said, you can't do that. You'll never make any money at it. Right. So and everybody's had this story. That's not a new story, right? Just relate to it. But that's an impression about money that's linked in. So I spent 20 years in corporate America, miserable, working, make money, miserable. And now, post that whole thing, when I finally unplugged from that programming, and now I look back and I think, wow, I wasted 20 years miserable doing what I wasn't meant to do, what I wasn't good at, what I wasn't happy at. So that's a way that stuff impresses upon us and affects us. It's hooked into time, because it took me all that time to change my experience. And by the way, during those 20 years, I was $150,000 or I don't remember the amount, $100,000 in debt or something, bad credit card debt. That is programming, not only of the unconscious mind, but it's hooked into time, because all of this linear time, it took me to unravel from that, because I also had other belief systems like it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Yeah. Okay, so these are just some of the examples. I want to just give a few more, and then I'm going to explain more about how universal laws, looping patterns, and repetitive cycles, because this is important even for humanity. So even your love and romance is hooked into time. This is another, and success and failure is hooked into time. Okay, so let's stay first with love and romance. Why is love and romance hooked into time? First of all, love and romance is hooked into time. A good example of how love and romance is hooked into time, let's say you think you're an entrepreneur, you don't have time to go on dates. That's an example. Or you don't have time to spend on the internet doing dating sites. Or another example of how love and romance is really hooked into time. We have a whole belief system in our society, and it's not completely inaccurate because there's other things linked into that, hooked into it. that you have to pretty much date someone within your age range. Or here's one hooked into time. Older men get to date younger women, but younger women don't typically get to date younger men. Or if they do, that will collapse. But the older men dating younger women, oh, that somehow seems to work. That's an aging program. Yeah. It's an imprint, but it's linked into time because all aging is linked into time.
I'm older than my husband.
What's that?
I'm older than my husband.
All right, it's not absolute. These are not universal.
Not by a lot, but still.
We haven't even gotten into universal laws yet on this. Right. So it's not a law. It's not an absolute, but we can see how culture and society hooks into time, because there's belief system that really you have to date someone within your linear age. And that's not inaccurate necessarily, because you go through lessons in stages of life that puts you in similar ranges of frequency of what you're going through in life. But the point is to say that this is how time does affect us. Mm-hmm. In fact, your age is completely tracked by time, and that is completely inaccurate. So the belief system of the collective, I'm telling you, this was never taught to me by anyone in the physical world. And I think this is the biggest, hugest aha among many. I mean, you know, this is what I love about going into the non-physical realm and working with the non-physical, because that's what I love to do. I like to go to the non-physical realm and extract information. And yes, I love being a student and a philosopher, but most of the things, I'm in my mind always challenging things that I'm hearing, like, something's not right about that. Something, give me more information. Like, you get little tidbits here and there, and then it's like, give me the truth. I want the truth, you know? So not that, anyway, so aging is not about linear time at all. Aging is really two things. And one of them is an expectation, right? Mm-hmm. Your brain believes that as you age, this is what's going to happen. It's written into your unconscious. It's programmed throughout the DNA. There are real programs in the DNA that need to be cleared, no question, that make it happen. And I mean, I've been spending the last 10 years trying to identify those. That's why I do speed activation calls and sacred key code activations, because I get to that stuff. I find it. And we didn't even know that stuff was in there, coded in our own DNA. So, but it is an expectation that's wired into time that the collective is sharing, so we agree. So when you turn 1, you look like this. When you turn 7, you look like this. Not just that you look like these things, but you can expect these kinds of things. When you turn 8, okay, but the other thing that makes aging, this is the big aha, more than that, it's just an expectation wired in, is that it's energy expended versus energy replaced. So if you're expending energy and not really taking time to replenish, right, there's an aging, an expenditure of energy, an over expenditure. Now, how do we replace it in our physical world? You sleep, you eat. But in the spiritual, metaphysical community, you meditate, you work with chi, you work with prana, breath, and you got to clear out those programs. You got to clear out the unconscious and replace with higher consciousness. That's what I do. That's my whole all foundation of my work is what I do. So, and this is true for humans and animals. So animals, yes, they have shorter lifespans, but that is also an expectation we put upon them. I have worked with so many animal lovers, and they'll be like, well, he's getting old. You know, he's 14. I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. They don't mean to do that, right? But they're impressing their belief system on their animal. Yeah. And that's actually aging him even more. Because he's a sponge, and he's absorbing and appreciating your frequency of what you share with him. Does this make sense?
Absolutely. You know, I was so surprised when I found out that Pekingese can live up to 20 years old. It's like, wow, I had no idea. It's like, oh my goodness. So now, you know.
I have a class that I taught back when I was a dog trainer. This was, you know, a long time ago. And I remember saying this in all the classes, because I always included a class on nutrition for your animals. And I always said, do you know that the age of the oldest dog this was at that time, so I don't know what it is anymore, but is 30 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Cats. Yeah. And that dog, I used it in the nutrition part because that dog was never fed dog food.
Mm.
So, I mean, he was supposedly, lived on a ranch or a farm or something. Anyway, it's an old story, but yeah, we have these expectations. And then, of course, they affect our animals as well. And they affect our children and our parents. So even like in my family, my siblings often say, well, mom and dad are getting old. And I'm like, well, I don't see them that way. I see that I've done so much DNA clearing and energy clearing on my parents. They really do look young. My mom is still playing tennis. My father's running he owns a company that is a, really successful company with many, many employees, and he loves it. Goes into work every day. They just bought us another home. And he's over 80.
Wow. So, awesome.
I mean, I feel like it is because of a lot of the energy work I do on them and the clearing and the DNA, and I'm doing stuff through bloodlines and all that. But it's also because I know a lot of the work I do with the quantum field is affecting them in a dramatic way. Plus they are living wonderful lives on their own, right? They're refusing in their own way to, entirely buy into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So awesome. They do in some levels, but I challenge them a lot of times, like, oh, what? So your friend doesn't want to buy a home because what? Is she preparing to die? Like they bought a second home. Mm-hmm. They were like, well, she doesn't want to buy another home. She wants to leave her money to her kids. And I'm like, well, what? Is she preparing to die or is she preparing to live? What's she preparing for at her age of 75? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is what happens. This is how we get hooked in. Okay. So those are some, let me give one more example. Success and failure is a big one, like time. And even daily rituals you have. How is success and failure linked? I mean, if you're a person who does work and you have a certain number of things you want to accomplish on a daily basis or even in your lifetime, you're calculating how much time do I have? Can I get it all done? Do I have enough time? Will I be able to get it done? And based on your belief system of how much time you have, or if you can get it done or accomplished, there's going to be an energetic response in your body, which is going to be equivalent to some form of stress or relaxation. I've got plenty of time. I can get it all done. Everything I'll get done. I can get it done perfect time. Now that's a more enlightened perspective, owning your time. But if you're really plugged into a linear clock, I don't have enough time, I won't get it done. That creates stress. Stress creates a resonance in the body that coagulates and forms illness, energy expended, aging. It's all hooked in. These are all hooks, entanglements. Does this make sense?
Absolutely. Yep.
And a really good one is, I'm not going to make it to the plane on time. I got to rush. I got to wake up at 4:00 in the morning. I'm not going to have enough sleep. Like the moment you have something in linear time that's hooking you into the collective time, like a scheduling appointment that you cannot miss, for example, a plane or a train, something significant like that, especially planes and that whole, the way airfare has evolved to make profit is they used to let you, they used to have open seats, then they didn't charge you late fees. If you missed a plane, they'd reschedule. Now they've gotten so strict to make more profit that if you miss, you have to pay another fee or buy another ticket, you lose that puts a lot of stress and pressure. So that hooks you even more into the linear time because now you don't have any leeway. There's no flow. Mm-hmm. It's constricted, contracted. So this creates this incredible tension and stress. You're hooked into this moment. I remember at one point in my professional career, this was the very last job I had. I used to call my boss a Nazi because she used to make us be ready for an 8 a.m. meeting every single morning. I'm not a morning person. I've learned my own flow and rhythm. But it's not about, I'm not a morning person. So we would have to be there at 8 a.m. If you were even 30 seconds late for the meeting and you had to be ready to speak, give your presentation every day of what you were working on, what you were doing. And if you weren't ready every morning at 8:00 on time, if you were 30 seconds late, you got like major knuckle slapping. And that's an example of linear time, created incredible stress.
Yeah.
So all these things are related to this. Now, there's a whole new way of doing it, but there's a whole new way, 5D, which we haven't really gotten into the dimensions yet as much, but there's a whole new way of operating with time. You have to, in order to function now, you really do have to function in a new way with respect to time in order to anchor into 5D. That's the whole thing. And that's the name of the game with ascension, right? The name of the game with ascension is to expand your consciousness enough that you're no longer basically a robot walking around being told by external authorities, including, as we talked about earlier, pharmaceutical drug industry, that it's normal to get sick and age and die, and you have to take pills that shut down your body, shut down your brain waves, turn you into a robot. You need, all this physical technology to tell you, if your body's healthy, and that's all 3D, where you're basically giving your power away to an external force that is an old and dying patriarchy that was self-serving, service to self, profit to the rich global elites who had no intention or desire to serve the masses, but rather to feed off their energy. They didn't know how to get their energy from source. They certainly weren't aligned with peace and love and the higher frequency of 5D. So in this old third dimensional paradigm, which is based on control, domination, and manipulation, those who are the sheep, who are unintelligent, ignorant, will be profited at their expense. And those who know and who have and control the technology, the government, the legal systems, the religion, the pharmaceutical drug industry, medical institutions, schooling systems, all of that, this is the Bilderbergs who have controlled. I'm getting off topic, I'm sorry. But that system is dying. And that is the same system that Julius Caesar, this is since the birth of humanity, Pope Gregory controlled time. That's the same system, that old patriarchal system. So now we have to birth ourselves out of this and evolve into a new way of being that is not based on what somebody else dictated to us, but rather our own connection with this source. And through that process of evolving out of that third dimensional reality, coming into alignment with our own connection with source, we align with peace. We have to do that through the heart center. Yes, we still use our brains, even more, but more intelligently. We open up our balance between the left brain and the right brain. We connect in with this heart center. We align with that divine love, that divine source. We find it within ourselves. We bring it into ourselves, and we recognize it's not about even judging that old system. It's more like it served its purpose. Now, you can even hear me just even the way I just did that. Not even 30 seconds. There's a shift already. That I just did it that quick. And we just come into this new frequency of love and peace and joy, and we realize that's the new fifth dimensional reality where everybody is evolving into, because this old system is on its way out and really has been left behind to the degree that we leave it behind. So as we find this new frequency and we're in this new fifth dimensional reality, we actually have to cross through the 4D of this non-physical realm. You have to become at peace with everything that exists in 4D that's not necessarily these higher frequencies of peace and love and understanding and forgiveness. Are we always there? No. I get stressed out over things, but I'm constantly, every day, coming back into my heart center, reuniting with my inner source, and more I find the anchor within my heart center. I'm really stabilizing in this fifth dimensional frequency. As I do, I'm coming into unity with everyone and everything, recognizing everyone and everything is here with me, part of me, connected to me. I'm connected to all of it, all of them, all of life, even those Bilderbergs, even the old system. I am part of it. It's part of me. So I have to somehow work with it and integrate, heal, resolve, all of it, right? This is 5D. So, okay, now we've gone through more of the dimensions, but if if time exists in a fourth dimensional reality, I'm traversing the beliefs, the belief systems, the programs, the entanglements of time and how it has affected me. In order for me to anchor into 5D, really, I can't be controlled by third dimensional time that is measurable, constant. This is the way, because all I'm ever going to do is get plugged in and programmed into that. I'm going to age at that time range. I'm going to get sick in that time range. I'm going to get stressed according to that time range. I'm going to be affected by someone else's dictatorship of time. In 5D, I traverse that in a whole new way. Now I have to create my own new experience with time. And it's not based on someone external to me, nor is it hooked into, this is the big aha, a belief system that time is external to me. It's not. That's a big one. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. That is a big one, that time is not external to us.
It's not external to us. But you understand, if this is programmed in your unconscious mind, right now you're hearing it, and people, I want to hear from people. I mean, I see there's a lot of chatting going on. I love to see the chat. It's so fun. You can't really pay attention to it all when you're chatting, talking, but the idea is that once you start realizing time's not external to you, that's when you get to start playing with it in a whole new way. You get to start realizing, you get to start realizing how you can extend it for yourself as you need it, and even shrink it. As long as you're not in any way, shape, or form detrimentally affecting others who are hooked into linear time. So let's say you have a plane ride and the plane ride takes 6 hours. You definitely don't want to be messing with that, because there's collective agreements there, and 500 people on a plane, or whatever it is, 200 people, whatever, however many people are on a plane, they're all working that. You don't want to override someone else's free will choices and agreements, and you really wouldn't be able to anyway, because there's contracts involved. And there's laws, which we haven't gotten into the law part. But you understand, this is all aspect of time. Now, but in 5D, you get to start playing with time once you learn how. Once you unanchor from the control systems external to you as they relate to time. All right, but let's go to your big question, because it took me all this time to build up to that. You got right to the juice of it. The looping patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the ones, that you're thinking over and over again, and that, they're not really allowing you to move forward or create something different.
Yeah. So the looping pattern question is you're asking it from an individual place, and I'm interested even in the collective. There's collective looping patterns. But either way, looping patterns are patterns in the brain. And what happens is, from a physical perspective, if you think about it, if you're firing off brain synapses, eventually the same thought starts to create almost like a synapse in the brain that just keeps firing off, keeps getting triggered. And it's kind of like, it's not the same thing, but if you're exercising that thought, and eventually it's like that pattern gets formed in the brain, it just starts going off on its own. This pattern gets hooked in almost like electronically, because thoughts in a way are electric, a form of electrical impulse, so to speak, or not even impulse. It's an electrical wiring of the brain. And if it gets fired off enough times, eventually that brain activity impresses itself, and that firing pattern keeps going. And before you know it, you're like, man, I just can't even control this brain thought. That becomes a looping pattern. And what happens is, we don't even realize until we start becoming conscious. I mean, if you ask a lot of people in the 3D world, I've played with this, things like, it's kind of normal in 3D to say to somebody who you're close to, like, what are you thinking about? Especially girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, what are you thinking about? But a lot of people don't really know what they're thinking about. I've asked people before, like in 3D, just out of curiosity, well, what are your thoughts about that? Or what are you thinking? What are your, what have you thought about? Or and they're like, well, I don't know. Like they're not even paying attention to their own thoughts. So if this happens throughout your life before you start to become conscious of the fact that like you want to think about your thoughts, those looping patterns were going, you didn't even know about them. In fact, I remember in some of my earlier psychic development classes telling my students, I don't really teach psychic development as much anymore. It's sort of just woven into all of the work that I do. But I remember saying to them, like, pay attention to your thoughts. And I would get questions from some of my students, like, why is it important to pay attention to our thoughts? Well, how can you possibly be more conscious if you're not aware of what's going on in the space between your ears? If you're not paying attention to what you're thinking. And believe me, your thoughts most of the time aren't even yours, because they're in the field of consciousness. And the more open you are, the more you can hear other people's thoughts. I mean, I can hear other people's thoughts all the time. And, but anyway, for anyone who wants to enhance your psychic abilities, if you can't, you've got to pay attention to your thoughts. But if they keep looping over and over again, somewhere your consciousness has to reclaim some form of inner control, for lack of a better word, over your own thoughts, right? But those are looping patterns. And what happens with looping patterns that impress upon the physiology, because thoughts create emotional reactions in the body, right? So let's say you thought about something like you were angry at someone, or you were upset about someone, something they did, or some relationship issue. Let's just use that as an example. And you have that thought, and you're angry, you're upset, you're hurt, you're frustrated, whatever it might be. That's an emotional response that's being triggered by the thought itself regarding the experience, the circumstance, or the relationship, right? Whatever happened in that relationship. And now this emotional pattern is impressing on the emotions. So the emotions are impressed upon. Now the physical body has a physiological response either, and you start to feel it. Anger, upset, rage, whatever it is. Now that has now created a resonance in the body. And this is energetic of the body. So now it's stored up somewhere in the body. And if this happens from generation to generation, it'll be coded in the DNA. This is what I was saying earlier. So let's say you have a problem with a friend in the same example, and then you go and you tell your kids, don't trust women who are over 50, or don't trust your friends, or your friends can never be trusted, or whatever the message is, because you're having an emotional response and you're sharing it with someone else, or it doesn't even have to be your kid. It might be another friend. I'm telling you, I should have never trusted anyone from. I'm just using this as an example. Now it's affecting someone else. They're taking it on as a belief. It's affecting them some way. If it's down the lineage, it passes through the lineage. So this is another form of a looping type of pattern, because now it's extended even beyond your physical form into someone else's. Does this make sense? Okay. Are you still with mute on you?
Yep.
Okay.
Makes total sense.
All right. So those are forms of looping patterns. And this is why working with energy healers is so important, because it's actually much easier to clear the stuff. I mean, life coaches work on this kind of stuff, and you can work with a life coach, but if it's really deeply anchored in the energetic body, really hooked into other things, it's a lot harder to clear. That's when people start feeling like they are blocked and they can't find their own block. They're like, I'm so blocked, or I've been dealing with this for so long. And a lot of times people will feel like, I've done everything. I mean, we've all had that. If you're in the spiritual, metaphysical community, the consciousness community, the awakening community, you have had that experience where you're like, I've tried everything. And I mean, I've had that, and I've gone to people, and there's nothing more frustrating than someone coming into your life and giving you some 2-second solution. And you're like, all right, I've heard this like a million times. I can't handle your quick solution, your quick fix to something, because I've tried everything. There's nothing more frustrating. And of course, we know you haven't tried everything, because something will work. But when you're going through that, and you've been dealing with some kind of looping pattern in your life, and you feel like you've tried everything, and then you're so frustrated or upset, we've all had those experiences. That's part of the awakening journey. It happens. I've been called by my own team, and I mean, I have a huge team of beings in the non-physical world. Like, I've called on them all. I recently had a whole new group of star beings come and ask me if I would like to have, you know, another real physical embodied experience of meeting a ship, having another so-called extraterrestrial star family physical, this wouldn't be an abduction or induction, it would be a reunion, is what they said. And I was like, whoa, like, what? This is, who are you? You know, like, you're new to me. And they're like, no, we've been in your community, we just didn't self-identify. Well, anyway, where was I going with this was, I've been called by many of my team a divine brat. Why would they call me a divine brat? Lovingly, of course, lovingly. Because I get frustrated, because I'm really doing the inner work. I'm trying everything. So if I feel like I've tried everything and I'm still blocked somewhere, and I'm supposed to be one of the light workers, way showers, you know, here's the light. Let's go this way. I figured it out. Come on. This is the way. And I'm still blocked and I've tried everything. I'm going to be frustrated. And they're like, oh, you're a divine brat. Like, patience, grasshopper kind of thing. Sometimes they say, it's like, hey, do you realize, like, time's ticking away. I've been working on this one for 10 years. But anyway, this is what we go through, right? We've all had those kinds of experiences with one thing or another.
So what can you do when you're in that type of situation?
Why, you can't give up.
No, exactly. You can't give up.
Well, sometimes it's like, what can you do? I'm going for a hike in nature. I'm going to go sit on a mountain and breathe for a little while because there's nothing else you can do. Right? That's how light workers make it through this. That's how we all are making it through this ascension. If you're consciously going through an ascension at this time, and if you're listening to me, you are, because right now you've got first wavers and second wavers are all waking up. And second wavers are waking up. They don't even know they're waking up. Mm-hmm. They're just suddenly starting to eat natural foods. They're just taking coaching classes, and their coach is saying, hey, your thoughts are the thing that's created your issues. And they're like, no, I'm not. That's a second waver, waking up, becoming conscious. Like, yeah, you're not a victim. It was your thoughts all along that created your reality. Mm-hmm. That's second wave. Because third wavers are sitting home basically watching the news and thinking that's real. They don't know about the Bilderbergs. They don't know that their media is completely controlled. Propaganda.
So it's important to have some rituals and have some processes that you do on a regular basis. Like,
yeah, thank you for bringing me back. Yes, exactly. If you get to that point where your team's calling you a divine brat, and it was always like absolute love. It was never while I was in pain or frustration. It was always like after I get the aha, they'd be like, yeah, you're a little bit of a divine brat. We had it here for you. You just couldn't see through your own block, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do? You go to nature. You go to nature, or if you're in that energy of frustration or upset, these are not new tools to us. Go to nature, do what you love, go for a swim, call up a girlfriend or a boyfriend, someone who's neutral, get a healing session. Yeah, if it's get a massage, get some cranial sacral. What do you need to take care of you in the moments when you're like, it's going nowhere, I'm blocked? Mm-hmm. You do stuff with someone who you trust, someone who understands how to be of service and is not going to energetically drain you because you're already, in your own way on the floor, having a moment of your own personal challenge through this ascension period. We're being challenged.
We all, I'm for myself too. I do personal sessions all the time, with other healers, or listen to calls, or talk to a friend when it's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, I will do that because you can't just stay in your own stuff, because you're not going to go anywhere. And, for me, sometimes it is, that's when I'll say to my husband, you know what, I need to go for a drive. So let's go out somewhere. Let's go out and be in nature. Let's, I need some sun. I need something, let's go. Right. Yes. And so that's me recognizing that, okay, something is stuck maybe a little bit. So let's go change that. So, but I'm not judging myself, right?
Sorry, go on.
I'm not judging myself, and I'm not beating myself up, and I'm not feeling bad that I'm stuck. It's like, okay, I recognize I'm stuck. Okay, let's go do something. Then that'll shift it. That'll start to shift it, and then when I come back, it's like, okay, now what?
Yes. But this is the biggest thing. I can't stress this enough.
Chocolate Randy says.
Every person must seek community with others who have already walked the path of whatever they're challenged on. So for example, I just recently signed up for a business marketing class. So not my style. I mean, I followed my own guidance, and I did what I loved, and I really still absolutely believe in that. But I mean, a lot of people haven't learned that aspect of self-employment. But this time I just signed up for someone who has been doing what I've been doing for 20 years, and she's a lot more successful than I've been at it. And it's not that I love the business part. It's just I really came to realize, like, I need some help, because this is like, I should not be working so hard like this anymore. This is my challenge. So I am such a big proponent. Like, my area of expertise is consciousness, spiritual connection, alignment with the divine, energy healing, meditation, psychic development, animal communication, DNA, ascension, awakening. I don't really need to go to someone else for that, in my opinion, anymore. Not that I wouldn't, because I love my colleagues and my friends. My colleagues are people I call up and I'm like, hey, like, what's going on in California there? A little masculine ego out of control, maybe, with all those fires or whatever. So, like, those are my friends and colleagues, so I can chat with them, but I don't have any friends and colleagues right now who are master marketer, business coach, business builders. Those are people who are not in my inner circles. In fact, those people typically, a lot of times, don't always cross this kind of line. But this is what this is about. Ascension is bridging the old reality and what works about it, integrating it into the new reality, and clearing, healing, and resolving what does not work about the old reality, whether it's personal or collective. So anyway, where I was going with that, long story, I talk a lot, is that if you're being challenged, you need to get support. And I mean, the biggest frustration I have personally is, like, I have people call me up and it's their woes, and I'm like, you need to take my class. I don't know how else to say it. You should be in my class. You should be doing DNA activation. You should be doing meditation. And when I use that should word, it feels bad, but it is what it is. If I have somebody calling me up and they're massively challenged and I'm coaching them on the phone because they're a friend, I'm thinking, you really need to take my class on this. And I mean, I can gift you a lot of stuff, but at a certain point, you got to get behind yourself.
Yeah.
You got to get behind yourself. You need to get yourself the support you need. And so private sessions are great. Private sessions are pricier.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why classes and group events are wonderful. I mean, I do DNA activations for $35. I could do it for a whole weekend and give what I give in 1 hour or 2 hours. A whole weekend, I could charge $350 for it. People would be still happy because they got so much value. And yet I charge $35 for a 2-hour thing. It's like the time class, which I know we're going to talk about. I offered this time class for $111. And I said, if you don't make your decision up fast, we're going to take it up to $199 or something. And then some people kind of balked, and it was like, well, it's worth thousands of dollars. Do you realize it's taken me 10 years of being called a divine brat by my non-physical team, my own frustration, it's worth so much. And yet people don't put themselves, why would people not put themselves in a situation where they can receive those benefits? We have to take care of ourselves. We have to get ourselves the support we need. And it's not going to come from the old system, from a third dimensional.
So is there a part of us that doesn't want to change, that doesn't want to move forward, that wants to stay in the status quo?
Yeah, there is a part. You know what that is? Fear. It's the fear fear-based programming from the third dimensional reality. Fear stops you from moving forward.
Yeah.
If you let it, doesn't have to. But that if you're wanting something and you're stopping because of any of those 3D reasons, money, worry, anxiety, can't make up my mind, time, all of that is third dimensional programming that stops us from moving forward. And even when I bought this class from this woman, the marketing class I was referring to, that was an expensive class I bought from for me, but I knew I was stretching myself, and I knew half the stuff she was going to teach because I've been doing it for 10 years, but I was like, no, I want to learn from an expert. And I don't want to struggle. So I'm going to learn from someone who is doing this in a stellar way. And yeah, she's 3D in her way, but this is the bridge between old and new.
Right. Yeah.
So
awesome.
Let me say something else about looping patterns that we haven't said, and this is going to push the envelope. Let's take an example like, I'm going to ask Source for a good example because there's so many of them. Well, one is the Great Depression. We touched on that. It's Great Depression of the early 1900s, which was a controlled, I'm being told you can go there, but it's another diversion. So it was done on purpose by the old banking cartels that are now losing power or have lost, depending on what dimensional frequency you're in. That Great Depression caused great trauma on a collective. When I say collective, millions of people. That trauma, as we've already discussed, created a kind of energetic coagulation in the collective realm of the fourth dimensional reality that was stored literally in the DNA as memories and records, stored in the Akashic records, which is a non-physical realm that stores records, and which are, of course, we're clearing all that stuff up, but nonetheless, in this example, stored in the emotional body and stored in the mental body because it's a memory and thoughts will get triggered from a memory. This coagulation of energy, if it's not cleared and resolved, this coagulation of energy will repeat itself again. In the example we talked about, 2008 economic collapse. And now in this economic collapse, similar experiences take place. That's a perfect example of the Groundhog Day with the collective. That's a looping pattern that the whole collective experiences. Here's another really good example. And then I'm going to take you to a more challenging one. I live in Florida at this time, and in Florida, it's very common to have hurricanes. And whenever there's news of a hurricane, you have so many people, local Floridians who have lived here for many years, go into panic. And you have gas lines because everyone wants to fill up on gas, and they fill up their bathtubs with water, and all the shelves in the grocery stores run out of water, and on and on. And then for 3 days, no one can go anywhere because there's no gas left at the gas station. This happens when they announce a hurricane on the news. And then the hurricane comes and it's over. This is a trauma that the local community is storing in this area. We're talking Florida here. It's local relative to the planet, but areas of Florida, not everybody has the same experience. But nonetheless, that happens in the state of Florida because why? They're carrying a trauma that they haven't worked through, and it gets triggered and reactivated. And the same thing basically happens again and again and again until they resolve it, until they finally look at the news and say, the last 4 times they told me it was going to be the worst thing and we were going to run out of water. And actually I wasted like hundreds of dollars on water and gas that I actually never even got to use. It's still sitting in and I didn't even need it. And then they start getting more conscious, right? But this is the way a collective impresses and you play Groundhog Day. So Groundhog Day has been happening not only for the collective, but for all of us as individuals. And it has been intensifying. So every time we see on planet Earth what we call in the awakening movement, we call these oftentimes windows or gateways where magnetic shifts are happening, or there's solar flares of intense light frequencies, intensifying things. Whatever you as an individual are storing up is coming up to the surface like a volcano within you, very intense, because Groundhog Day is not supposed to be perpetuating anymore. In order to anchor into 5D, you can't carry any of that old trauma. So this Groundhog Day in your personal experience, let's give another example. You have family problems or relationship problems, and the same fight happens over and over again, and then it's even more intense than it ever was before. Why? Because it's unresolved trauma. Make sense? This is why when we have these periods of time in the ascension timelines, such as a gateway window, a portal window, you can always know major gateways based on numerology, 11, 11, 11, 12, 12, 12, example. Those things intensify. Certain astrological events, solar flares for sure trigger them, and eclipses trigger them. Eclipse windows bring them up. Those are Groundhog Days coming up with increasing intensity so that you can resolve them. Those are good times to get support from your tribe, your community, your light workers, meditations. That's when I do activations and healings for my community who wants to participate. So that's an example of Groundhog Day happening in our lives. Okay, now I'm going to here's where I want to push the envelope, because I like to do that. It's fun.
Go ahead.
Let's look at World War II examples with World War II. One of which is just the whole Nazi World War II invasion, where the Nazis, as an example, or other global elite factors involved in a war, stood at border crossings. And at those border crossings, you had to, especially a good border crossing example, you basically go through lines, you're strip searched or checked. If the Nazi feels it's appropriate, they can take your gold, your silver, your jewelry. That happened during the Nazi times, right? And then you're boarded onto a train to go somewhere, and you're not exactly sure where you're going. Or even if you aren't exactly sure, you just get on that train and you go. You have to trust. What energetic, now let's forget that it's Nazis, let's forget that it's strip searching your gold and silver. Let's just look at the energy of someone standing at a border who's able to pat you down in some way, take what they think is appropriate, and then you get loaded onto a transportation device. What does that look like to you? Come on, I'm seriously asking. What is that? Come on, you guys. Randy? You know. How do I get out of the private ones? And I can't see them all. Someone said slavery. Come on. Do better. You guys can do this. I can't believe nobody can make this one. Come on. TSA. 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 I can't be the only one who gets that. Can you guys see that?
I see it now that you mentioned it. Yeah. I see that. Hey.
This is Groundhog Day. This is how humanity repeats patterns over and over again until we heal and resolve it. Here's another one. This is why I like these calls, because we get to go push limits, right? I couldn't do this on national television.
You can do it here.
I have a writer who she has a show, and she wants, to get it on TV. I love her so much. And she always says, you can't talk about any of that conspiracy stuff on the show. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. All right, but here's another example. Let's just be pushing buttons too. The United States drops.
What does TSA stand for? But it's basically at the airports, the airport, the transport security, something or other.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you put someone in a position of power who has the ability, who's given authority to pretty much take anything. Water bottles, now it's something different. It's not necessarily your gold and silver, unless your gold and silver is linked to something they see as dangerous. But there's a lot of authority given to those people who, yes, they have to follow their own rules and regulations, but okay. So another example is, let's say the United States bombed, and then we'll move on from this because we made the point. The United States bombs Japan, and that bomb devastates, a whole country. And let's say the trauma of that's not done, and we're going to go into conspiracy here a little bit, but let's just say the United States has weather control devices that can sort of bomb Japan again, and it creates a tsunami that suddenly knocks down a whole nuclear power plant that traumatizes the planet, a country.
That happens.
Can we see that that's a repetition?
Wow.
And that is what made that tsunami. It was weather control devices known as HAARP, HAARP, that are in the United States and in other countries too.
Mm-hmm. And now the whole 5G.
That's very disturbing, right? I know this is disturbing. I mean, I don't have a problem with it because I've worked through this already. That's why I can talk about it from more of a neutral place. And I get that I'm pushing buttons, but it's to help us to realize the way to complete these systems from cycling over and over again is for us to consciously work through it. And how are we going to work through it? Not from a trigger response reaction, but from a place where we can see from a bigger picture and we can really understand we're done with that. And that's why light workers and star seeds and way showers, light change agents, truthers are so important at this time, because we're the ones kind of working through it ahead of time for the collective who still doesn't really know about it, because it's not easy information to deal with. It's really hard to accept that, to work with that, to see how did I in any way, shape, or form, just even energetically contribute to that so that I can somehow be part of the solution and resolve it. That's all. And that is all linked into time. Again, just to bring it back home here, because it's just a cycle of energy that repeats itself. Make sense? Okay. Have I put too much on here?
My dog is talking now.
Chatty.
Working through it look like? What does working through it look like using the TSA example? What am I doing inside? Asking the question as to how I.
Well, I mean, I can only say for the TSA example, for me personally, I had to look at how much I resented somebody enforcing on me, even my physical body, because you should never go through those devices. They tell you it's safe. I had this one, like, really arrogant. I mean, I could just see the Nazi in him from a psychic point of view. I don't know who he was, saying, they don't hurt you at all. There's nothing. And I'm like, yeah, who told you? Who told you that? But you can't challenge people who are just in their rigid mindset, Heil Hitler kind of mindset. I mean, that was the personality of this particular TSA agent. So for me personally, I really had to forgive TSA. And I had to forgive all of my reaction, because I had to come to a new state of consciousness on it. Like, these people are helping us to work through this trauma in a way that's a lot less horrible, in a sense, from a judgment word, than the Nazi situation was. They are helping us to work through issues with authority figures, our resentment at those who sort of control and dominate us. They're serving that purpose from a higher perspective. I had to come to that perspective so that I could come into acceptance and understanding and peace with it. And through that evolution of myself, because I really couldn't stand these little, from that old vision of mine, before I worked through it myself, I perceived them to be Heil Hitler lookalikes, act-alikes, people who had authority, control issues. And of course I had the control issue. that I had to work through too. So I had to forgive TSA and I had to forgive myself. I had to ask divine consciousness for higher perspective on it. That's what I was seeking, so that I could align with a higher perspective. That's only why I know this stuff, in my quest to heal and resolve my own issues with the role that TSA plays in this example. That's how I came to this knowing of what I'm sharing. And I call it a knowing because it's my knowing. It might not be yours, but that's where I got this information and how I came to this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Everything we resist, react, or judge. This is not new information to anyone here. But everything we resist, react, or judge is something within us that's out of alignment with source. Source is acceptance. Source is peace. Source is understanding. Source is all those other things too.
Yeah.
Nothing that it's not. It's just, I don't want to vibrate and harmonize with 3D anymore. I want to vibrate and harmonize. I mean, I want to be in harmony with all, but I want to harmonize with 5D.
Right.
That's
so if we are still resisting, reacting, having a lot of energy or charge come up around certain situations, that's still stuff that is in our field to be cleared or healed. Or
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And understand that, I mean, the control of fear-based frequencies, that's the dominion of the third dimensional realm, fear-based frequencies. And that would include resistance, judgment, reaction, wrongness, punishment. Should they be punished? Should those Bilderbergs, look, last time we had the topic of Donald Trump come up, and I think that got a little misunderstood what I was saying. What I'm saying about Donald Trump, like him or don't like him, I have no opinion on that. But he is the first president who is not controlled by the Bilderbergs. The Bilderbergs, and I'm just using that one name, the Morgans. I mean, this is not a conspiracy call, but this is a fact. I'm giving fact as I understand it, sharing enlightenment. It's a free call. If you don't like it, hang up. If you don't agree, that's okay. But I'm just sharing a piece of wisdom that I have learned through my awakening process, and that is that all of humanity has been controlled by an old line of very rich global elites who have controlled all institutions and systems, finances, everything, and we were under their control. And the whole point of 2012 is the liberation of humanity. So what does that mean? We get freed from their control. And that means, but we have to become sovereign. We have to claim that. We have to choose it. We have to decide to liberate our minds. This is why you had people in the 60s starting to wake up, right? Because it was supposed to be done by 2012, ideally. We fell short because they were still able to sabotage the awakening of humanity, at least on this collective timeline we're on. So, I'm talking about using that name Bilderbergs, but that's just one family lineage. There are many, many global elites, and they were in the early mid-19, like around the 50s, there was even more extraterrestrial interaction that sabotaged that. I mean, this goes back to the birth of humans, where extraterrestrial influence played dramatic role in the influencing of our DNA and affecting us as human species, right? We were basically hybridized of many star family races. But the key to know as it relates to our existence in this physical lifetime, we were basically being held hostage in a third dimensional realm that was a fear-based, control, domination and manipulation reality. And as of the 2012 timeline, we've been being set free. And to the degree that we bring and carry forth all that stuff with us, it's being recreated. But the beauty of it is we're also simultaneously coexisting in this beautiful fifth dimensional reality and beyond, which most humans haven't accessed that or don't know how to yet. But once we anchor in 5D, we can access that. But the thing is because these timelines and these energies are overlapping, anything we're still bringing in can be easily cleared out, released, and transmuted. And that is ascension. That's the ascension timelines that we're on right now. We are having the opportunity to look at those things with a new perspective, to elevate to higher perspectives, to shift our consciousness, to make peace with what was, to come into acceptance with what was, to honor it as part of opportunity, to learn, to grow, to experience, to expand consciousness, to elevate, to change, to evolve. That's the true human evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
True human evolution is we get to evolve our consciousness.
And we're doing it more and more, right? And it actually is becoming, I think, easier for us when we're actually consciously choosing to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's getting easier because light workers, the first waivers especially, we didn't get a ton of credit. We're like sitting at home being the woo-woo people 10 years ago. We were the ones that movies made fun of for walking around with our crystals. That's part of the conspiracy too, right?
Walk around with my crystal.
Right. Yeah. We were walking around going, and then they made fun of us in movies, and that was a good way to keep division, divide and conquer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
and it
now
works for a lot of people.
Step on board with this, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I make it like I was always doing it, but I wasn't. I mean, I am definitely what I call a braided starseed. That's my identity. I identify as a braided starseed because of that abduction experience that I had, which is really an induction experience for me. But if you looked at me prior to 2000, and I don't even know when that was, the early 2000s, I was in corporate America living the 3D life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never have identified as who I identify now and how I identify myself now. So that's, as we all evolve, we re-identify ourselves. We identify ourselves as someone and something new. People who knew me then would look at me now and be like, she's a little whacked, huh?
Absolutely. Randy, did you want to say something? I think you're unmuted, right? Maybe not. I thought you were unmuted for a second.
Do we have any questions? Because, I mean, there's a lot of people on the call.
There have been comments and questions throughout, but nothing specific per se. I mean, I think everyone's been enjoying the conversation.
Oh, good. All right. Well, if anyone has any questions, maybe we can answer. Well, the other thing that's worth mentioning too is just timelines, because this is really relevant. Because I'm just kind of looking at the package, because I want to also I want people to get the package. It's a really good package. I put it together exclusively for this community, and yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about timelines for a minute.
Timelines, yeah. So yeah, this is a timeline. If you're in this community, you may have heard this. You probably have heard this before, a little bit about timelines, but we're just starting to really understand more about how to consciously work with timelines. Timelines as they relate to time. So time, we know, is in 3D is a linear story. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, etc., as we spoke. Timelines are experiences that individuals and or collectives experience, and as they go through that experience, there's a linear story connected to it or attached to it or entangled with it. So if we go back to the story of the hurricanes in Florida, let's talk about that because it's a good example for timelines. The hurricane hits all of Florida, but on the same block, one person, let's say me, because this is my truth, what's happened every time there was a hurricane, because I know about this stuff and because I've worked and communicated directly with Mother Earth, and I can communicate directly with hurricanes. They have a consciousness of their own. I've had many dialogues with many nature spirits, so to speak, who are basically involving, especially once you give a hurricane a name or a tornado a name, it's very easy to dialogue with the consciousness. Well, anyhow, as it relates to timeline, stay on topic. Let's say the hurricane comes to Florida and you've got one block, one neighborhood, and like Donald Trump's golf course in the last hurricane was hit really, really bad. And along the area where we live, just down the street from me, there were big power outages. My block was basically hit the same way. And yet I don't know about any of my neighbors because I don't know them, but I know I did work for my whole neighborhood. I did a lot of work for all of Florida, but of course but I had no power outage, no water missing, nothing went wrong. My internet was fine, everything. And yet just down the block, people had massive outages. Now, why is that? And we're hooked up to the same grid. Mm-hmm. The reason it is because those people are on a timeline where they're all collectively having an experience. And I'm on a timeline where I'm having another experience because I held my power. I had my power. I didn't lose my power. Where does power come from? Where does power come from? Your power doesn't come from the electric company. That's just a reflection in the physical world. Your power comes from your connection with source, your alignment. You hold your power. You're a powerful being. All of us. We have power within us. But if we believe that the power is going to go out and what's going to happen, oh my God, we might have a power outage. Now we've just given our power to that reality. So that reality will reflect. But this is an example of timelines. Another great example of timelines. Because they're same reality and yet two separate timelines, two separate experiences by individuals and collectives. Make sense? Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Another really great example of timeline. You're going to say, what?
No, I was just going to say, well, I understand that, but I don't understand how that relates to timelines.
Well, because a timeline is an agreement, so to speak, conscious or unconscious, by an individual or a collective to have an experience.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah.
It's a shared experience. My agreement with myself during those hurricanes was I am going to be the light that gets to talk about how my powers stayed on while other people's went off. That was my agreement. I meant it very consciously because I knew I was going to use it as a teaching example because I'm here in Florida as a light worker in Florida, anchoring to raise frequency and consciousness in this area. I knew when I came here that was part of my mission for this particular geographic area where, I mean, when I came here, people thought I still have that experience where a lot of people who think that they've been doing this work for so long, and I think, wow, they seem really behind to me. Not that I mean it in a judgment way. It's just, that's how we help each other.
Yeah.
That's what we are here to do. So, because everybody's waking up in their own time and space. It's just that this particular place I was assigned here. I love swimming. I love the beach. It works for my personality, my lifestyle. And beings of light come to places to help and whatever. So, okay. So the reason it's a timeline is because two different experiences can happen. Mm-hmm. And one person might think everybody's having that experience.
Right.
If you're unconscious, you think everybody's having that. You're walking around in your reality thinking everybody's sharing the same experience. Mm-hmm. And nothing can be further from the truth.
True. Yep.
Here's another really great example of timelines. Why it's so important to understand timelines. You can't just understand it intellectually. You actually right now on planet Earth have to be conscious of how to work with timelines because you don't want to be on a timeline where something non-beneficial or non-benevolent happens just because you have to learn how to get out of that. You want to put yourself on your highest and best timelines where you have the highest and best experiences. So, because those are available now. If you're dealing with something like poverty, you're on a timeline where you get to play with a collective who's dealing with poverty. If you're on a timeline where someone's stealing from you, you're having experience of theft, for example. That's not even a good example, but that's a frequency. Another really good example for animal lovers, since so many of my community's animal lovers, you lose your animal. Now there's I teach a lost animals class. I don't teach it live anymore, but it's such a good class, man. I really do need to get that out there. But an animal gets lost. Okay, there's a frequency of energy that creates a lost animal. Person has to be stressed out, worried, anxiety. Things have to be going on in their life. And then there's a timeline where that animal's never recovered. And if this energy continues, that's the timeline they're headed for. Energetically, it's a very likely experience, because this kind of energy is not the same energy of, I found my animal, we've been reunited, yay, home sweet home. That's a totally different energy. So you have to find a way to anchor onto that timeline if you want to recover your animal. This is why people don't find their animals a lot of times. Most animal communicators they go to find their animal don't even understand timelines. How can you find your animal if you're on a timeline of, I've lost my animal? And I don't do lost animal cases anymore. But yeah. I had a woman come to me. She went to a very high level spiritual teacher who said, your animal's lost. She came back to me after I said she would find the animal if she got on the spiritual path, changed her frequency, and got some more consciousness, because that was the purpose for the animal's contract with her. She works with the animal. Worked with me. Even after that other spiritual teacher said, you'll never find that animal, let go. She worked with me. A couple months later, she found her animal.
Wow.
On the right timeline. This is a true story. You got to know how to work with timelines. If you're a light worker, if you're a healer and you don't understand how to work with timelines, you're missing out. Mm-hmm. And I mean this with all love. Like I even wrote it in my most recent newsletter. If you don't understand this stuff about time and timelines, happy Groundhog Day.
No, thank you.
I don't mean it with arrogance, even though it might say it's just my personality. I have a fiery personality.
So here's an interesting question from Michelle. She said, I'm questioning if we really need to help or just live in joy that isn't harmful to others. Isn't serving just another subjugating program?
I love that question so much. And you are absolutely right, Michelle. That is true. However, there are some light workers and starseeds who have very specific missions. Mm-hmm. And really, light workers and starseeds at the very front of the line, gatekeepers, grid workers. If it wasn't for, and I'll include myself in this humbly, mm-hmm. There are so many around the world who have done such amazing work. If it wasn't for us, there's timelines of collapse. I don't even know I don't know about those timelines. Extinctions, like way beyond even what we've witnessed on our collective time. There's timelines potentially. I don't really know if this ever did happen, but I do know it was the agenda for World War III. And I imagine that timeline, my understanding is that completely collapsed. And if it was not for light workers and starseeds who really understand this work, grid workers, gatekeepers, there's mass devastation. Mm-hmm. My understanding, those timelines were collapsed. How do you collapse a timeline? You collapse a timeline by resolving the issues so that they do not have to perpetuate as Groundhog Day. So, to answer your question, if you're not having one of those missions, you're absolutely right, because that's a mission too, Michelle. A mission is to be of joy. This planet and all of humanity, we need more joy. If the third dimensional reality had lost its joy. Life became so mediocre, ho-hum. You have a whole collective of in a third dimensional realm of beings, a lot of beings who have just basically surrendered to the fact that they can do nothing. This is part of the dumbing down of humanity. That was a part of the conspiracy. Dumb them down till they feel so powerless that they feel like they can do nothing and they're hopeless. Yeah. And that happened. So if your particular mission is joy, that is a mission in and of itself, to be a joy spreader. It's an important mission. And you're right when you say, isn't the idea of helping just trying to interfere? You are right. In fact, I do a weekly call with 5 incredibly high vibe beings who, these are people, you don't even know about people like some of these light workers out there. You never even hear about some grid workers and, you know, some of the beings who have done incredible work for humanity. We get on the call once a week and we go into a sacred neutral place where the energy is so, it's hard to hold in your body. And we're just opening it up and flowing it to parts. We have no particular attachment or direction. It's what does source want? Where is it meant to go? And you're right. So you are right, Michelle. And I absolutely respect and honor your question, because we're not meant to influence. We're not meant to help. That is an egoic, belief. But at the same time, there are real missions here that have been going on. And those people who have fulfilled incredible missions, I'm so in awe. I could cry right now, and in honor of these people, because they're the unsung heroes of humanity. We have. I take credit, some teeny bit. Well, I would like to take more than a teeny bit, but anyhow, I really believe that light workers and star seeds, and this is not a one person job. This is thousands and thousands of people.
And I think too, Lori, that some of us light workers and whatever, we didn't plan to be a light worker. That wasn't what we thought. I mean, I worked in the government,
You didn't plan it with your ego.
No, I didn't plan it with my ego.
You planned it as a soul.
Yeah.
The soul and your oversoul, in other words, your unique divine alignment planned it, contracted for it, agreed to it. And so you just didn't, your ego self didn't plan it.
No, and even for myself, my ego self wouldn't even accept anything like that. It was like, I don't know, it was like really pushed down. I don't know. It was strange to see me doing the work that I'm doing, where I was like, how did that happen? Because it's like the old me. I don't know. It's like, it just, anyway.
But the thing is that, see, because humanity is shifting so much from, we already have shifted from service to self to service to other.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the third dimensional reality was based in, me, I, me, mine. And now it's, in the lightworker community, it's very commonly known. It's now us, we, ours. And you realize when you shift there that the joy of living, why do I spend 2 hours on a phone call here? The joy of living is giving. The joy of living is sharing. So I get to share my learnings and my perspective in service. I'm not, that's the joy. So we've shifted now, and this is part of the whole evolving. You start to realize, like, oh, it's all about us. It's about we. And yes, it is about one divine source. However we identify that or unite with it, ultimately through our unity with one another and with this source, we realize we are all connected to this ultimately one source. And that, whether we call it God or the divine, or we come together, and this is incredible. Yeah, it's joy, it's love, it's, what are we going to now create from that? That's why it's so important to anchor into 5D, because when everybody is really anchored, and this is happening in waves, it's not all at once, it's a transitional period of time that we're in here. What amazing, wonderful, fabulous, fantastic, phenomenal things can we create from that place, instead of this old fear-based me, I, me, mine place that really wasn't really that fun. That was just all about fear and selfishness and greed and suffering
and scarcity.
Scarcity, yeah.
Yeah.
That reality isn't that much fun. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say that was so important, it was inspired partially by Michelle's comment, And that is that when you really realize that you really can contribute to the whole of humanity, because that is the gift of being a light worker, because you realize how much joy, the joy is in the giving. That's when you want to serve in, yes, joyful ways that feel so good, where there is no attachment to the particulars. And what I do for that is I have what's called sacred government calls, because we're the sacred government. We are the new government of humanity. And this government is a government really is of the people for the people. It's where we get on collective calls and we contribute to the greater good of humanity without the particulars. So the only rule of that on our sacred government calls is that we, whatever it is, must serve the collective in the highest and best ways with harm to none. So what are the things that serve the collective in the highest and best ways? Clean water, fair systems based on fairness, equality, goodness, serving the greatest, the highest and best of all with harm to none. I mean, that's what we've repeated over and over again. But we look at the water, we look at the earth, we look at our medical systems, we look at schooling systems, and we just keep infusing it with our choice is what will serve the highest and best of all with harm to none. And we're working for the collective, but we're actually calling in consciousness, we're channeling that energy, and sometimes we're saying eliminate. What do we want to eliminate? We want to eliminate GMOs. They're not good. They're harmful. So we can eliminate things if they're harmful or detrimental. We can eliminate things that are creating pain, misery, suffering, illness, sickness. We have power, but it's not power control over. It's I, we, us. It's service to source, the divine, that the divine will, the will of the divine is served for the collective. What is that? What is the will of the divine? The greatest, the highest and best. I love it. So anyway, we do sacred government calls. And actually that's part of the package. That's one of the things you get to be participant in our sacred government calls, and you get to learn. Because see, when we were talking about that old reality where people think they have no power, they go home, what's the use? There's nothing you can do. That's been the collective agreement of 3D now. If you're on that timeline, I mean, I'm not on that. I don't interact with people like that, but I know it still exists out there. Well, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. You're just a victim.
Right. Yeah.
That still does exist. It's not in my personal reality, but I know it's still around. I don't have that experience because I don't agree with that at all. I feel like I have great power, and so do so many other light workers. And it's not about control in the same way. It's about influence for the highest and best, and allowing the divine will, the will of the divine, to come forward, and really amplifying the energies and the frequencies and the vibrations of the fifth dimensional realm and beyond, and anchoring it more wholly and completely into our physical world. This is what's uplifting everybody else, whether they know it or not. This is why now suddenly you got people being like, do you know what chlorella is? You know, you need to, like you're starting to hear people who aren't necessarily spiritual at all or into the physical. They don't necessarily hang out with angels and archangels and ascended masters, but they suddenly do realize how important it is to eat organics. And they suddenly start to realize how important it is to only, if they do eat animals, eat grass-fed. And they suddenly realize how important it is not to use pharmaceutical drugs. And, you know, not that pharmaceutical drugs are all bad. I'm just making the point. That's humanity waking up, even if they're not woo-woo, even if they're not into the angelics and all that stuff. That's
they're starting somewhere, so that's fine, you know?
It doesn't even matter where. It's for the greater good of all.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But that's the ascension. That's happening on the collective. That's out there, and it is happening. You're even seeing, you know, more of those more mainstream soft disclosure TV shows. I mean, soft disclosure has always been out there. But there's now a TV show called Project Blue Book. That's soft disclosure of government secrecy tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff's starting to come up more and more now too. I mean, you got TV shows and individual networks now, Q&amp TV, that's making more of this stuff available, and you know, getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those people don't even connect necessarily with this stuff of change your beliefs or, you know, all that stuff. But this has been going on behind the scenes.
Awesome. And it's slowly, you know, more and more people are waking up to it. More and more people are starting to change their diet, what they're drinking, what they're eating. You know, that's where it starts.
And I mean, I have a video on YouTube. Look at my dog back there. Isn't she so cute? My Kiko lady. And I think it's so funny. I do sacred key code activations, DNA. I never even realized until one of my clients said, you know, your dog's name is Kiko, like key codes. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so funny. And yet that's the way it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing's by accident. Nothing's random.
True.
I didn't get into the law about time, and let's talk about the package, because we've been on for a while now. I think we need to do that. But let me just say, there is no law of time, but there is a law of synchronicity. And it's very important to know about the universal laws. Like, the universal laws are the laws that govern us in 5D. Doesn't mean we go and break laws of the physical world. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that you rise above those laws of the physical world, and you realize your true governance becomes the universal laws, because those are unbreakable, unbendable laws that serve the greater good of all, and that are aligned with the ultimate law of one, which is, you know, the law of the divine source, right? Law of one, that all there is one, and that one is all that is, and all is part of that one, and that's unchangeable. Everything else, other than really the other laws, is changeable. So you want to know about the laws, because they're your new governing force. And as it relates to time, what there is law of cause and effect. So if you haven't cleared something, the effect of energy will recreate itself, because energy keeps recycling itself in perpetuity, right? E equals MC squared. There's a law of cause and effect. So everything has an effect and everything has a cause. And you have to understand that law. You have to understand the law of attraction, which is so commonly known. Similar energy will attract to similar energy. So that's why you see the same Groundhog Day, because law of attraction is coagulating, which is then there's a law of synchronicity, and that synchronizes things. It synchronizes energy, so there's no coincidence. Actually, no such thing as coincidence,
right,
as we understand it, except that energy is coming together and recreating. Now, if there's any part of your life experience that isn't really fulfilling to you, that isn't really bringing you happiness and joy, or adding somehow to your happiness and joy, okay, somehow you must learn from it, or evolve out of it, or shift, heal, resolve it, so that it doesn't keep repeating. Because it will, like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, but it's possible.
And it'll amplify and intensify during gateways and portals and solar storms and things like that, so that you can resolve it.
Yeah.
But this is why it's so much fun to do it consciously. Why not just get into conscious circles, conscious classes like this? I mean, we just did 2 hours. To me, from my perspective, we were just of service for 2 hours of linear time to expanding consciousness. We don't know everyone who's on this call, but this expands into the collective, because the moment we start talking about it more, like I said, a lot of what I shared here, I didn't learn that stuff from another human being, most of it. I learned this from the non-physical world. That's one of my gifts. I love that gift. I'm really, really awesome at taking information from the non-physical world that is it's not like reading it in a book. I'm extracting information. I'm working with the non-physical. I'm translating, making sense of it, relaying it, working back and forth until eventually I can bring it through. And I do channel. I am a channel, but I'm not like a trance channel. I'm not an embodied channel. My form of channeling is more like a kind of relay. It's like it comes in, I can hear it immediately, it comes out. And that is a form of absolutely channeling. It's just not trance channel. It's not embodied channel. But, you know, this is how now once it's brought into the physical world, it's anchored more fully in the physical. So to me, we've just been of service to humanity.
Yep.
Because this information becomes part of a collective consciousness now. It's at a frequency of information that any brain can pick up on. Yay.
Awesome.
Expansion of consciousness.
And then, you know, and it's not just everyone who's watching and listening now, but who's going to watch and listen later, you know, and because there's no time anyway. So they're basically getting it.
Claudia, how are you doing there? You look perplexed.
Who?
I didn't mean to call you out. I just saw your face. Maybe I called her.
I am amazed, and I am listening to you, and I'm like, how does she know me?
No, only because I can see that.
No, I mean, what you've been talking to, I went through it too, and I just love what you're talking about. And quantum physics is one of my main things, and I'm also a channeler, so I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm not alone in this thing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're not alone. We're all learning together. We all have our, you know, our piece that we're bringing together in the puzzle of the expansion of consciousness.
Yes, so thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you too. It is. This is what I love to do. I could do this forever. Like I get on my calls and I'm like, I don't want to hang up. And then I can hear people like, okay, enough already.
Yeah, too. And Renata knows me, and I could go on and on and on and on too. So
yeah, fun stuff.
Good to know.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the package, and then we can take some questions afterwards.
Yeah. So for those of you who are on the live page, you can just click on special offer. And those of you who are not, you can go to alara.at/show/Lori, LORI. So there's two packages actually, right? Special offer A and B. So
wait, can you say the link again?
alara.at/show/Lori.
Oh, okay, good. Got that. I want to look at it too.
Okay.
All right, yeah, so let's talk about this package. So first.
You want me to bring it up on the screen?
Yeah, I just brought it up on the screen.
On my screen?
Oh, yeah, that would be fun. Oh, this is good. This is a really good package. I first of all, this first part of it, wow, there's 12 things in here. I'm going to explain them. The first part of it is a brand new, almost 4-hour course I did. It's about 3.5 hours.
I will eventually get it
class on the time trap. It's brand new. The only people who have heard it are the people who registered for it.
Yeah, it was just on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yep.
Yep. All right, here we go.
And now, you know, the only thing is you're not going to have me to ask questions on it. They had the opportunity to ask questions and to be there live. And there's a meditation in there. Oh, okay. How did I lose now I lost my screen though.
Yeah, but it should be big on the screen right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you did. Because I was just looking on my computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all about, that's really, and what's really big about that is we really went into it a lot more. We went into codes in the DNA and and we did clearing. So at the end of the class part, we did a healing where we started to clear out those hooks, the cords, and you know, a lot of them are labelable. You don't realize, like, for example, there's actually codes, you know, and cords and entanglements that are actual energetic. They need to be cleared. So we did that. And there's new programs that have to be placed into the consciousness. Well, they're ultimately in you in oneness, but you have to align with these new belief systems and these new programs in the consciousness. For example, I can tell you that time's not outside of you, but if you're still wired into that and it's not cleared from you, you're still going to operate like it's outside of you and has power over you. So this package in the healing part of the meditation, it's a almost 4-hour class with a healing part and a meditation. We clear all that. So now it's removed from the unconscious and all the energetics are cleared. So that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there, really, I wrote in my newsletter, along with the bonuses, which some of those bonuses are in here, it's valued way more than even what I charged my community, which was whatever the price is there. Well, actually, one was more than even the price of this package.
Mm-hmm.
That class alone was more than the price of this package. Okay, so, but it's a recording this time. So, but okay, this second item is where we go into dimensions, timelines, gateways, and portals. And that class goes into, that's also like a 3.5 hour class. And that goes into really what they are, how to know and identify them and how to work with them. And have jump time. Okay, the third one is more about jumping timelines and this concept of the bifurcation of time, because obviously we don't know what's on other timelines that we're not on. We don't know if World War III took place, actually physically took place. I don't even want to put that out there because it's just destroy Nixon if I cancel clear. But you're existing, your consciousness as a conscious being exists throughout all time and space. So where is your consciousness existing right now? Here, right now, in this here now moment, you're here. But your consciousness exists in other time and space.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding bifurcation of time and space and pulling your consciousness into the timelines that you want to exist on,
mm-hmm.
it's important.
Yeah.
Right now, especially when we understand this concept that veils are being lifted, which is explained more in those classes. All of that's explained. Okay, this item 4 is brand new. That was my item. That was also a 3-hour class on the predictions for 2019. Understand, my form of predictions is not like, okay, in January we're going to see this. The way I do a predictions call is, what are the energies and frequencies that have coagulated that are going to come up that we're going to be playing with? And then, of course, we do look at some of the universal truths. Numerology is numbers are universal. So number 3 is a number 3. We're in a year 3. 2019 is a 3. Add it together, it's a 3. That means 3 is going to influence, 2 is going to influence, 0 is going to influence, 1 and 9, and in a certain order. Okay, we look at numerology. We do look at tarot, even though I am not a tarot fan at all, because tarot card decks, okay, I know I'm about to push some buttons here. Tarot card decks have been black magic rituals, so they are not trustworthy. However, sorry for the button pushing I just did. However, because the collective of people who are paying attention to them agrees on them, they have influence and they affect us by, they are influencing factors, and they can be used for some knowledge and wisdom from that perspective. So we look at that. We also do look at the major astrological influences that are affecting the whole planet. We dissect that. We also looked at the I Ching. We talked about how the Chinese New Year may or may not affect us and how that's related. And we talked about I Ching. Oh, the animals, because I'm an animal communicator. That's a huge part of the way I work. I serve the collective of the animal kingdom, what their role is here and how they're helping us. So animals come forward every year, how they're going to be working, the key animal influencers, and how we can call upon them and work with them for support. So that's the way the call goes. There's a lot more in it than I'm even mentioning, but it's really the role of what light workers will be doing, how we will be helping in the ascension timeline, supporting the collective as collective awakens, because this is a major year of disclosure with Jupiter in Sag, as I talked about earlier. So how do light workers need to be of service? That's a huge part of what we discuss in that call. But it is understanding what's going to be happening. What are we going to be playing with this year? What are we going to be looking at? So that's in there. Item 5. Oh, this is a brand new meditation, which I love. I gave it to my community. For people who are in my community, I do a lot of gifted stuff, especially around the holidays. So I gifted my community a really sweet, lovely meditation for consciously creating and for consciously using the tools of manifestation, which has been like, I love manifestation because when you play with that, you're able to have conscious ability to create your life the way you want. So that's what that meditation is. It's sweet and lovely, and it's about 40 minutes. You can listen to it over and over again. It doesn't have to be, it's not wired around a new year. It's every day's a new year. Every day's a start, brand new start. Then item 6, we talked about that earlier, is the sacred government call. So every time I do those, like usually like once every 3 months. This is the most recent one we did. And you really will, for light workers, it's wonderful. You channel energy and you learn how, according to the universal laws, light workers, starseeds, way showers, we don't get any special treatment. However, at the same time, we do. We get special treatment. So we can never break laws, universal laws. They're still governing us. And there are energetics and contracts, sacred agreements, etc. Those things are in place regardless of who you are or what you do. Well, you have power to change agreements and things like that, of course. But you understand that when you claim your role as a light worker, there are, in its own way, certain ways. This is a hazy area because it's not a hard and fast rule, but you do get special treatment, actually. It's hard to say that because it's not really true, but it is true. But when you get this call, you'll understand. It's just not something I can explain in 5 minutes, but it's in there. So you like it because you get to claim certain rights, certain special treatment, that because you're a light worker, certain things start working for you, that just because you get to claim it. Anyone can claim it. And you're a light worker, you get to claim it. Serving the greater good. All right, item 7. Oh, this is where you get this is just wonderful energy healing transmissions for people and animals. I actually don't offer these calls anymore. I'm pretty much not going to be offering them because they do have some very wonderful coaching on there that's just valued way more than we've charged for it. But it's really worth its value. Incredible coaching, healing, support for people and animals too, and children as well. And that's, I think, a 90-minute, or maybe that's a 2-hour call. Live energy healing. When I say live energy, it's energy channeled from source. So you're getting energy healing with that call for you, your animals, and children too. Because, source energy is never limited. Okay. So that's the package A, right? Oh, there's some extra bonuses. This is an extra bonus, communicating with crystals. So every year I lead a sacred crystal journey in Arkansas. The next one's coming up in August. It's so much fun. We work with the crystals. We use the crystals. We learn to communicate with the crystals. We work with the grids. You learn all about that. It's a 2-hour call. It's so good. It's so good. You will love it. If you enjoy crystals, and even if you don't, if you have any physical health issues, you will learn how to work with these crystals for healing. It's, at least, this is certainly more than a basic course. And it's not even a course. It's a free it was a free class, but it's really valued at so much more than that. You get so much out of it. Oh my God, it's a great class. But I will talk also about the journey in it, and you'll hear about the journey. It's an extra bonus. And then item 9. Oh, this is all about the matrix, exiting 3D. So we've touched on some of that here. But that is I think that's a 2-hour mini course about really what the matrix is and what's possible when you exit the matrix. And when I first taught this class, I remember I was getting like emails from people like, "You're crazy, lady." I didn't get a lot of those because it's not in my consciousness that I feel that way about myself anymore. So it doesn't reflect back at me. Do you understand this? I don't get, but I did get a couple of those comments on YouTube when I was talking about this stuff in the early days. Mm-hmm. Now you won't think that, but it's very radical. It's like, it's very radical. It's radical stuff. Like an example of what we talked about with the aging process today, for example. What if disease doesn't have to happen? What if we never, ever have to have disease again? What if sickness and illness for all of humanity is completely eradicated? You see, from within the matrix, you can't even imagine those things. But, right. All like this, we can imagine those things. But that's our future. Anyway, we go into that stuff in way more way more. That's all what that class is. And then is there another bonus in there? Yes, another bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Vibing out of 3D. Okay, so this is the second part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a second, wait, was that, can you go up? Yeah, this is the one's exiting the matrix. And then this is sort of like, okay, once you exit the matrix, how do you really anchor into 5D? But it's the second part to that one.
Yeah.
And it's another 2-hour class. And it's awesome. I love my stuff. I think it's all good. Okay, item 11 is understanding more about our galactic history. This is slightly a little dated because I now know more from this one. That's why I priced it, I valued it a little less. But really, if you know nothing about our galactic history and our ancestors and the star family races, the extraterrestrial influences, you will love this. It's a really good foundational understanding. That's a 2-hour class. That actually was, I think, even part of my exiting the matrix class. I think it was like a bonus call in there or an intro call for them. Because I have a whole course on exiting the matrix.
There's one more.
Item 12. Wow, this is a lot of items. Yeah, this is a cosmic solar gateway healing call. So there'll be live energy healing to work with any of those things that come up for you that are your programs or patterns that intensify. And whenever it's around something like a cosmic solar gateway or portal gateway, that means those energies are really intense. So we scheduled that at a cosmic solar gateway. The energies will be very intense. Even when you're listening live in delayed playback, you're still getting access to the energy healing. So any issue that you've been dealing with, you'll be able to get healing and support and assistance in clearing and resolving it. So that whole package right there is valued easily at $1,400. Today we're offering it at $133.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of savings.
Yeah.
And then package B.
I'm laughing because I put this $444, but it's really, way, 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 way more than that.
Yeah, package B is basically a living library of most of my work. I don't put the live things in there. I don't put the new stuff in there, but it always is getting added. It's got everything.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to the actual page. It's just better. I just put that there, but there we go.
Yeah, that's my website.
Yeah.
The Sacred Membership Group. So this membership group it's a year-long membership that you're getting. If you want to go for package B, you have access to the entire repertoire of stuff. This is really, really good for people who either are very new or want to go really deep, because it's not just new stuff. It gives you foundation on everything like chakras and animal communication, psychic development, crystals, sacred geometry, there's a whole numerology class in there. There's an entire course on the secret energy of money, which is valued at $550. I just don't resell that course anymore, but it's an awesome class. If you want to work through your wealth issues, there's all kinds of stuff on self-love, self-value, self-worth, tons of stuff on the afterlife, connecting with those who have crossed over, including especially animals, tons of energy healing on everything, issues related to, health, money, wealth, love, all the things that matter to us most.
Mm-hmm.
Well-being, relationships. There's tons of content on healthy eating and sacred rituals, and there's tons of stuff on astrology. There's stuff about karma. There's a mini class on learning how to use the Akashic records.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good library of so much content, and you need a whole year. You need the year. You don't get overwhelmed by it. You just have to say, I have a whole year to, just log in, listen to any of it. Past lives, parallel lives is in there, ancient archetypes, understanding sacred contracts and agreements, chakras, chakra system, which there's a class on that, and then there's a class on how to clear it all out, and then there's a class on how to, make it a Taurus. There's so much stuff in there. That's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, yeah. And there's some of it is video. There's a whole class on clearing entities. That alone, there's a class with a PDF handout that is literally could be a book. There's so much good stuff in there. As long as you're not a person who's going to log in and go, oh my God, I can't handle it. It's too much information, because it's tons of information. It's not just information, it's energy. There's PDFs. There are some videos. There's a whole video in there. There's tons of stuff on animal communication and telepathy. A whole new video I just uploaded on that. That's really good. And yeah, you will not be bored. You will not be bored in this. You will love it. The only time I ever had somebody ever once even make the slightest complaint, she literally, she just got overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, I don't have time to listen to all this. Well, you don't have a time. Okay, you should listen to the time class then.
Awesome. So, it's normally $444, but with the coupon code, it's $222.
For this call, you get 50% off.
Yeah, so Awaken Now is the code to get it for $222.
All right. And I mean, the way I listen to stuff whenever I want to listen to stuff is I basically put it on when I'm either, making dinner or preparing my dog's stuff, or else I have it on my phone if I'm walking my dog and I want to listen. Or sometimes I put it on the iPod when I'm driving. I don't listen to the radio. I'm not really that interested in so much of commercials on radio. So, you listen while you're doing other things. I sometimes listen while I'm working out. Certainly if I'm making dinner, or if I'm, sometimes in the morning before I've started my day, I might listen to something. That's the way to do it. So you don't feel like you're overwhelmed by it. You just like, oh yeah, I just can really log in really fast. It's all there. It's all categorized. And you can be like, oh, I want to meditate. There's tons. I just uploaded 3 new meditations. There's animal communication meditations. There's meditations for, manifestation, and meditations for healing and finding your dream life. And okay, I'm in the dark here now because it's getting late. But anyway, I think people will love it. I love it. It's all the stuff I love.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of
my journey and everything I ever shared and ever taught. Like I said, there's a whole class on numerology there. You can be literally from what's in there. You can become a numerologist.
Michelle is asking, I'm very interested in developing my animal communication abilities. Would the membership be the best way for me to go, or is there a different program that would be better?
Well, unless you want to invest $1,100, I can get you in my online course. But really, no, it's a great starter. Especially if you want to start and get the basics, go for it. It is awesome. My animal communication ebook is in there, which is on Amazon. My animal communication workbook is in there, which is also on Amazon. Those go to Amazon. You can pay $5 each for those. But why bother? There's so much in there. Not only that, there's a whole class on animals in the afterlife, connecting with them. There's an ebook in there, Animals in the Afterlife. There's a whole class in there about what the animals know. There's tons of animal stuff in there that will really be foundational issues for learning animal communication. Not a full course, but it is awesome.
But there's so much more in there too, not just the animal communication, but there's so much more in there too that could also be helpful.
Yeah, because if you're going to be an effective animal communicator, you have to know a lot more than just how to do telepathy.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people who take animal communication are not always great animal communicators, because they haven't done the other work that they need. So yeah, there's an energy clearing in there, a Reiki healing class where you can sit and do Reiki healing for you and your animals, and that will help you.
Yeah,
I can't even list it all. There's so much. I wish I had
there's so much. When I was making the page, it's like, should I put everything? There's like, no, it's too much. It's like, no, I'll just put everything. There's like, more and more and more and more. It's like, there's a lot.
I mean, I always was of the belief that I wanted to over deliver.
Yeah.
And I have done that.
Definitely.
The amount of content will blow you away, and that's why you have a whole year access to it. And the truth is, you can download it and own it. You have that ability to download almost all of it and own it. Even PDFs, there's books and PDFs, and it's fabulous content.
Yeah,
it's really high level content, and
there's a lot.
It's very easy to start, because almost every class works with you foundationally, but it goes extremely deep.
And there's lots of healing and clearings and activations too. Tons.
And the manifestation and healing circles that are in there those are over the last 10 years. So not that you necessarily, some people don't always like older stuff, but it's all relevant, because stuff in the awakening process is not based in linear time. I got to get some light on in here, because it's. So
those two offers are available for the membership program. Be sure to put in the code Awaken Now in order to get the 50% off. So package A is 133, package B is 222. So
I have people with those packages who the people absolutely love it. It's, the spiritual community, the whole spiritual metaphysical stuff on planet Earth has gotten such a bad rap for so long. Why does the screen look so weird? Is that happening on your end?
It's just when you're moving around too much.
Oh.
Does package B include package A? No, they're two separate packages.
Yeah, they're two separate packages. But to me, what it is they are the solutions. They're the solutions to everything. I personally think finding solutions in an old physical way is just too slow, mundane, and monotonous. Doesn't really.
So maybe she's asking. So the stuff that's in package A, is that in the membership group as well?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Because those are all brand new things. There's two of those things are in the membership. Two of them.
Okay.
The dimensional. Cool. But the rest are not.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions?
You can do both.
Yeah.
Why limit yourself to either or? Do either and. Do both and.
And. So yeah, does anybody have any questions regarding all the wonderful stuff that we talked about today? Timelines, number one. Time shifting, which is kind of like the timelines thing. I don't even know anymore.
To see everybody now. This is so fun. I love these calls. All right, then. If nobody has any questions, this is your chance now. I hope this was helpful.
RL Cook, I do. What's the question, RL Cook?
She has a question. You have to find the question.
Oh, I just joined. Oh, so
you just joined the call?
So did you want to type in your question, or are you going to unmute yourself? Or do you want me to unmute you?
Well, if she just joined, she might just be saying RL might be just, we don't know if it's a she or he.
It's a she. I see her now. Do you want me to unmute you, RL Cook?
Yeah, unmute her.
Hello?
Otherwise, let's go, because I don't want to, I think we've used our time, and I'm ready to move on with my day. Now, I love being here, but we did a great call. I think we contributed hugely. Yeah. We also, for people who feel inclined to learn more, I would love for them to buy the package, because I also have to put food on my table and pay a rent. But it's all from the heart. I love everything that's in there, and I stand behind the package. So both of them. If you feel inspired, please do. And if you have a question, this is your last chance. Otherwise, we're going to say goodnight.
Go ahead, RL.
Thank you. I just released my third book, Once Upon a Livestream Dream, and it's on Amazon.com. But I have had a pet psychic reading that the cards that she wrote words and drew pictures on are in there. And later I was able to confirm her messages and drawings with verifiable data online, such as the name of the regiment in China that my pet was my Unrequited Love, 900 years ago, the Jinjurchen Regiment in China, and other things that were verifiable with our current experience now. Have you done any of that, Lori?
You know, I'm not even sure what specifically you're asking me, what I've done. When you say, have I done any of that, you mean what this woman read?
Do you mean like verifying?
Have you written down messages and drawn drawings on pieces of paper for your clients that they could take and verify later and put side by side that to confirm that you were correct?
Well, I think we all have our own form of readings and our own form of getting information. And I do absolutely say that my stuff is verifiable, because most of the time what I'm giving are things I could never know. But my style isn't about writing things down and comparing them like that. That's someone else's style. And it seems like you've just shared that. So that's someone else's style, not mine. But everything's verifiable. And even when it's verifiable to that person, because there's usually things I'm giving that there's no way I could know. And in fact, a huge part of what I teach in my classes is how to validate. So validation is incredibly important. And that I always do, even when I'm connecting with people who have crossed over. If I'm working with someone who's crossed over, I ask that person or animal, please give me something that there's no way that I could know, that only they could know. So from that perspective, yes.
Okay, I see.
Everyone has their own style, and I don't write things down for people. That's not what I do. But they're always welcome to record things and go back and recheck, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So, hold on. So Randy had a question about resolving DNA corruptions. Ways to resolve DNA corruptions. Are there ways to resolve DNA corruptions?
Yeah. But we don't even have time. I don't even know that we have time to go into that right now, because that's a whole other call.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of what I do, right? We have corrupted DNA. We have DNA that's been hijacked. We have DNA that's been messed with. And we have all kinds of programs and scripts running in our DNA that causes and contributes to all kinds of problematic experiences in the third dimensional reality, including all those experiences that we've had, like things we're just not even consciously aware of, like self-sabotage and, greed. And, here's a good one that's come up just recently. Unconscious aspects of our own need to be superior or inferior or, better than, worse than, less than games. Or
so are those
or even our judgment game. Like all that stuff is in the DNA. It's not part of the original divine blueprint for a human.
It was all corrupted and added and or manipulated. So
yeah, I mean, the aging programs are forms of corrupted program. Aging. Yeah. And all forms of illness are corrupted programs. All forms of disease are corrupted programs. Death is a choice, a conscious choice we will make in the future. Entirely conscious. But you say that now, that seems absurd. But that's in the DNA. That has to be cleared and identified. There's death programs in the DNA. Suicide.
Yeah, we talked about that before, about the suicide programs. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there's just tons of them. And that's the stuff I clear on what I call speed activation calls. I do those as I'm guided. They're typically quarterly. And they're always around portals, gateways, major periods, windows of time that are, eclipse periods. And they typically are, as source guides. And I get all of that stuff from source. What do we need to awaken in the DNA? What do we need to clear out of the DNA? What codes are meant to come online? And to me, this is nobody knows about. As far as I know, I'm not learning this from another person. And sometimes when I'm working with it, I'm like, this is really whacked, man. This stuff better be real. And I mean, I'm like, I have to test it and retest it. And when I'm working with the non-physical realm, I'm having to make sure that I'm getting real accurate information, because it is whacked. Who would think that you've got something in your DNA that's wiring you up for disease? Or who would think that there's something, here's a really good one. Divide and conquer. Who would think? You would not think that there's something in your DNA or in the DNA of the human genome that's gender identity issues, gender confusion. Right now, society's just becoming acceptable. It's considered mainstream to have gay and lesbian relationships, and we're meant to accept that that's normal. And I'm not saying that it's unacceptable, and I'm not judging it, but I am saying that if people are so dramatically confused about their gender that it would become normal to cut your penis off because you're a famous celebrity having a TV show that's in the media so that it can influence people to think that that has to be normal, I'm saying something is confused. Something's not aligned. And that's corrupted programming.
So are there any activations or healings or things like that in the membership group for DNA, not corruptions per se?
In the membership group, there are DNA activations. Yes. In the sacred membership, there's about 5 years worth of DNA activations. That work with those things in the membership. The codes and the codons. I mean, I've been digging through this stuff for years. And the thing is most of humans, we still are so wired into, we want a pill and we want it all right away. And I mean, when I'm done, I won't maybe have any wrinkle. I'm still aging, working through clearing that stuff out. So it's not like this is all brand new information available to humanity. We're still working through it. So it's not, I'm still discovering it and uncovering it. So like most of the codes and the DNA code stuff that I'm talking to, I'm doing them on those speed activation calls. And those codes and codons that we're clearing and whatever we're doing, those are speed activation calls, and I do them live. And those most recent ones are not in the membership yet. I do them live. Yep. But there are 5 years of DNA activations in there with a lot of this stuff in there. Yes. Sacred memory. At least it's more than 5 years of DNA activations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Let's take one last question. If there's one last one, and then we can go. Yeah. Because it's in 2 hours.
It's been almost 3 hours. She's like, what?
Yeah. So we'll take one last question if there's one last one. Otherwise, we'll say good night for the evening.
Yeah. Anybody else have I think we talked about the DNA activations and stuff already. So is that it, guys?
Yeah, that's good. I'm ready. I mean, I love being here. But
Are there 24 or 12 DNA strands?
What's that?
Are there 24 or 12 DNA strands?
There are 12 strands of DNA that the physical world is aware of and that science has validated. Beyond the 12 strands, there's way more.
Way more.
Way more than 24.
Yeah.
They're etheric. They're not, the physical science has not been able to see them because their equipment that they have
doesn't measure.
At least that they've shared with the mainstream, they don't have it. We don't know what's going on in Plum Island and other places where they're playing with genetic testing and stuff, what they're not telling us that they do know. But as far as our current science knows, they only know of 12 strands. But in fact, there are up to at least 144, 244, depending on how much you have enlightened yourself. We don't really know the answer to that. As far as I know right now, I'm able to identify 144 strands. I've been told from higher realms there's much more.
Yeah. Awesome.
We can only access what we're able to access. Right?
That's right. Yep. Thank you. That's good.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun to explore, right? Because we're also creating this stuff. The more we go into it, the more we're willing to dig and dive. Source reveals, creates, expands. What else is there?
Yeah, so keep asking questions, keep being a seeker or a truther, and see what you get. Yeah, keep asking, but not today. Not
all right.
This call.
Alara, I want to thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. It was fun. It was wonderful.
What I really love so much, and I'm so grateful, is that I call myself sometimes like a WYSIWYG, like what you see is what you get. I know that 3D, it's based on, being really polished, and I would like to be more like that, but it's not my style. So I love that we can be so casual and real, and I love your company. And I'm grateful to be part of this community. I enjoy it, and I enjoy the camaraderie and the friendship and the connection. And I love sharing. So thank you so much for having me, and also everybody who came and played live and also in delayed playback.
Exactly. Thank you. And thank you everyone for your comments and questions and feedback. And thank you for, contributing your energy to this space, and being inquisitive, asking questions, being open to hearing more, and sometimes maybe something different. So thank you. And thank you, Lori. It's always so much fun talking with you, sharing with you. I always learn something new, whenever I do have these conversations with you. So yeah, I totally enjoyed it too. So, but it is late, I know, for me anyway.
Patient dog, she's ready.
I know, she's been there for this whole time, just sitting there, right? It's great.
She is an amazing dog.
Yes.
We have an incredible partnership.
It's nice. Where's mine? I don't even know what mine's in the other room. But so, all right. So thank you so much, everyone.
All right, guys.
This will be up later on the replay page and so on. So until next time, may you continue to be blessed with an abundance of joy, peace, love, happiness, prosperity, and radiant health. Bye for now. Much love and blessings always. Bye for now.